Okay, so in this video, we're going to create a personal list page for our green book. Green pages, sorry. I'm calling it green book. Green pages. So as you see, when you click run in any project, make sure this builds first thing. What it's doing is it's displaying to you the index page. We saw that in the first video. So the content on that page is what shows on the screen. Cut out, right? So it's the index page that's linked to. So what we want to have here is on the index page, an actual list of all of the person objects in the database. So first of all, I've already added a record to the database manually. Just click view data, Michael Mail. I can add a second one here. It's my dog, Django. Pet. So now there's two records in there. As you see, it automatically gives them an ID. That's from the database. It gives it an auto number sequence. So that's the first step, is have something in the database. I mean, you don't have to. First step, I could delete both of these, and then we'll be adding an add button to the main page. So anyway, the first thing we want is a record in the database. Second thing we want to do is we want to add a connection string to the app settings. Right now, the connection string is hard-coded in on the context page. We actually want to remove that. You want it to be in the actual configuration, so you can change it. Let's say, you don't have, obviously, a computer called MM Desktop. You've got another computer, and you may be on your default instance. I'm on MS SQL Server 01. So, there's all these different reasons why you would want it in the app settings. So here, we're going to add connection strings. And we're going to add a new one here, default. Okay, so now we'll get the connection string from there. We don't need to worry about it in here because this is always overridden in the actual. So this is just a code library. The reason this was on here, we could actually remove this now if we wanted to. But we do want to have it on the website. So we'll get there in just a second. So another thing we want to do in this file is we want to add constructors that will accept how it's actually being constructed. I'm not really sure if I explained this very well, but basically we need public green pages DB context. So this is a constructor that overrides the base constructor for DB context itself. And that's it. So we're not even going to put any code in there. Basically, we're saying do base, whatever's in there, and then do this as well. We're also going to do one more. This is the one that really matters, that when we send in a DB context options object, that we can get the options out of it. So this is the type green context. We can call it anything we want, call it options. And base. So now, again, we're saying when this is called, call the base options. It's basically, we're extending this and we're allowing us to put code in here if we want when the context is initiated. So we're going to now go to the actual website. Close these out. And then what actually happens to the website? Well, what runs? The actual thing that runs is program, but it does use the startup class too. So what is done in the startup class? It does things, it initializes itself with a configuration. So this is where it gets the configuration from the app settings JSON, where we just added that connection string. But then this method gets called by the runtime. Use this methods to add services to the container. Okay, we definitely want to add a service here. What service do we want to add? The DB context. So services dot add DB context of type. Now, what type do we want to add? Green pages DB context. Right? And as you see, this already underlined because the green pages lib is already included here. If it's not, of course, add it, or whatever you need to do. Now is where we're going to add in those options. So that's why we needed that override. Use SQL Server, and then we need a connection string. So lucky for us, we put the connection string in the configuration file. So here we can just say configuration dot get connection string, and we called it default. And now it's getting the connection string from the JSON settings file. So if I want to change the connection string all over, all I need to do is just change it in this app settings page. Okay, so that's all we need to do in this startup file. So now we're ready to start rendering the code, right? So what do we want to render? Well, we want to render people, right? Where are we doing this? On the index page. So here's the index page. You'll see it uses a model of index model, which is actually the code behind here, index model, page model. So by default, it throws in this stuff about loggers. We're not going to use that. So instead, we want the context on this page, and we want a list of people on this page. So these are both properties. So we want green pages lib dot context, and we'll just call it DB context. And so now, because we know we're doing more than that with library on here, we can do this and then do the using. That's the equivalent, right? We also want a list of people on here. So public list person. Again, it's going to be red, right? What do we do to fix it? Using green pages lib dot models. So we're going to call this persons. Right? Now we need the class initiation, instantiation, right? So public index model. And what we're doing here is we're just making it so that we can take in the DB context anytime the class is initiated, right? So we need green context. Let's call this DB context. We want this dot DB context equal to that. And then we want this dot persons equal to new list of persons, which is initiated from a collection of persons, right? Or it could be empty, whatever. We can insert them one at a time, whatever we want to do here, but we're going to get them from the DB context. So this dot DB context dot persons. It's that simple. So this abstracts out everything that you need to do to get it from the database. So this DB context implements the .NET Core DB context functionality, which does all the loading. Basically, when we did the creation of the model back in the last videos, it invented all the stuff we need to insert, delete, select. So all the CRUD operations, right? Create, read, update, delete. So it's abstracting all that for us. We don't even have to do any SQL queries, right? So this just says, give me all the people, put them in this list, please. So that's what we need to draw the page. Well, let's make the page. First of all, it's not a hello world anymore. We'll say, welcome to the green pages. Okay. Do another div. And in this div, we basically want a table, right? So we're going to create a table of, so we'll just do a table. We'll give it some style here. This is bad coding practice, but I'm doing the stuff directly in here. This is just a demo. Normally you would do this in a CSS file, but I still want to say about the table. I want it centered in the middle, so I'm going to make the margins auto on both sides. Do some really bad coding style, and that's using old school table directives rather than making this stuff. Tables in general, this is data, so it's forgivable. But in general, you don't want to use this old school table, these table codes and stuff like that. But again, this is just a demo. I'll give it a head. I'll say TR, TH. What do we got for data in this table here? We got first name. And then I'm going to have a column for actions. And let's also add in we'll get to what's, so basically we're creating a link on the page. Or create a new person. So what is the difference between creating something new and editing something old in a form? Well, everything's blank and it has an ID of 0 until it's saved, right? So really, it's the same page, the edit page. So we'll just say, we'll just guess what we're going to be calling these pages. Question mark, person ID equals 0, right? So we know we're going to be creating a page that's called edit, which doesn't exist yet, that takes in a person ID as example. All right. Looks good. So now we're going to create our data. That's table body. So now we're going to do this in a loop in code. Each pages live dot models dot person. So I'm fully qualifying. That's what it's called when you do this dot this dot this, rather than trying to get it to do using, because you can't do usings in these code pages. Now you can include this namespace in the configuration files, but whatever, we're just a demo here. So in model dot persons. So for each person object in the persons list, do something. What are we doing? Well, we're going to create a row in the table. And the first column, we're going to do, so you can just do person, you got to do at to let know you're doing code. So this is, when you see these ats, this is Razor. It's C# code being executed on the HTML page. So I can do person.firstname. The end. So I can do person.firstname and then person.lastname. Sometimes though, when you're deep in coding, it doesn't know what to do with that. So you can tell it HTML.raw. Sometimes it'll HTML encode and weird stuff. So I think good practice, and what I usually do is that HTML.raw when I'm writing out something like that. So let's do last name. And then we want a cell that contains all of the actions. So TD. We want to do style, text, align, left. You'll see what I'm doing here. Basically, I want a unordered list. So just a bullet and then edit, bullet, delete, bullet, details. So those are the three I'm going to create. So the first would be details. So UL. So this is going to be to the details page, which we haven't created yet. With person ID equal to what? Underscore person dot person ID. And this is details. Then we want two more in our list. Oh, that's why it's green underlined. It's warning me. That's got to be in a list item. That's fixed. So now in my unordered list, the first list item is a details link. Second item will be an edit link. And the third will be a delete link. Okay, so we just did a lot of coding here. Let's see how well we did. You see where we may have a little bit of a problem, so I'm going to go ahead and add a line break here. See where we got. Oh, that looks pretty good. Success. So we've got Michael, male, and Django pet in the table, and we're showing them here. These links, link to, see down in the corner down here, when I scroll over, details, person ID equals 1, or details, person ID equals 2. So that's it. We've created this page. We have a link to create a new person ID 0. We have the data from the database displayed here in a reasonable manner. We've got 3 control links. So next we're going to implement the details page, and then we'll go with edit and delete. And in the meantime, we also have to create pages for editing and creating and deleting phone numbers and emails and addresses. So we might not go all the way through this. We might just go through the phone numbers or something like that, since this is for a phone book, but you'll get the idea, and I will assign out to you to create the other pages once we get done with all of that. So that's where we are right now. That's it for this video. So have fun. See you on the next one, which will be details.